Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett, and oh my goodness, do we have a doozy today. Ben Schwartz is a national comedy treasure. You know him as Jean-Ralphio on Parks and Rec and the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog. And he just so happens to be one of the best improvisers out there. He got his start at UCB New York, and he now tours the world with his long-form improv show, Ben Schwartz and Friends. This is one of those golden episodes that's just stacked with treasure. In the first half, he tells a story about Parks and Rec that is truly one of the most insane showbiz stories I've ever heard in my 20 years in LA. And in part two, we do an improvised scene together so he can illustrate his style of playing the straight man or voice of reason character. We do the scene, but he also comments on what he's doing and how he sees the scene. I think you'll find it very helpful. What do I mean by part two? Well, we are now breaking all of our episodes into two halves. The first half will live here for free forever, and the second half can be found on our subscription platform, yesalso.supercast.com. We would love your help and support to keep this show going and to also pay our guests. So if you go to yesalso.supercast.com, you not only get access to part two of this episode, but you get a ton of bonus content. Oh, and one last quick thing. In Ben's plugs, he talks about tickets for his tour shows being on sale for next year's shows. That's because we recorded this at the end of 2024. So actually, it's this year's shows. All of those 2025 dates are on sale now at his website, rejectedjokes.com. Okay, and now, Ben Schwartz. Ben Schwartz.
Have yourself and harmonize. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let the Yule day. How's it go? I'm Jewish.
Let the Yule day.
Is it Yuletide?
That was it.
No. How does it go?
Make the Yuletide gay,
Make the
I think.
Yuletide gay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And
from
now on, everybody will be gay.
So have yourself a merry little Christmas. With a G.
Gay.
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 Great.
Look at that.
Susie, thanks
We're
for having me on the
everywhere.
program.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Is this a holiday edition because we did that?
It is.
Okay.
It'll probably air in June. So you're welcome, everybody.
Okay, great.
And I think that's a wrap.
Thank
I think
you very
we got
much.
it. Yeah, it was so great.
This was awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It flew by.
I went really quick. I could sing it again if you want.
Oh, have yourself a merry little Christmas. I think it's beautiful.
Make the Yuletide gay,
super gay.
From now on.
Bad harmony.
It's
is one
also
of my
your,
favorite.
whenever you go down, your whole face goes
Yep.
down. So it's like, from now on. Like
on.
your face taking an elevator down into the chord.
I was.
note.
Did you sing in high school? Were you like in the choir or anything?
I was in all the nerdy ones.
Yeah.
I was in all county chorus. I was in madrigals. I was in men's ensemble.
You had so many of those. Was that all part of your high school?
That was high school. And then
That's a lot.
I never auditioned for the musical because I was too afraid people would tell me I wasn't good enough.
Oh no.
So I was afraid of failure. We could talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
I was afraid
Get
of
in there.
failure when I was a kid, and so I didn't take a lot of chances. I didn't take a lot of risks, and almost into improv because of it.
Where do you think the
From now on, where do I think?
Where does that fear come from, or where did it come from, and how did you conquer it? Because you seem so fearless now. Are you?
In certain things, in my improv, although you know what, in my improv, I've gotten pretty good at being in the moment and allowing whatever's happening in the moment, not worrying about like, oh my God, is this scene gonna bomb or something like that? Because you and I have done 100,000 scenes. I don't even know how many. It has to be 1 billion scenes.
Yeah.
In our times, if I've done probably 1,500 shows or something like that, and how many scenes in a show? I mean, we must have, and that's not.
And then classes.
And then
yeah.
And then the groups, like the training groups where you have a coach and stuff like that. Where did it come from? I think this is a great question. I think there was a part of me that I was the funny person in my group of friends, and I didn't I know when in college, the reason why I didn't want to audition for the improv team was in my group of friends, I was considered pretty funny, and I didn't want to find out from the funny people that I wasn't funny.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, I guess I'm not. And then what am I? Oh my goodness, that's part of my identity. Then what am I?
Such a core part of who you are.
I think so. I love comedy so much.
Yeah. When did that start? Do you have a core memory of being like a young age and discovering something that really made you laugh?
I remember one of the first laughs I got. I went to public school my whole life, but when I was in the Bronx, my mom was a Bronx public school teacher for 50 years.
Incredible. She
taught music K through 5. That's why I love musicals. My mom is a music teacher. And I was in kindergarten, and Mrs. Parley was my teacher. And next to me was a kid named Shigeki who did not speak one word of English. Did not know how to speak English at all yet. Just came to the Bronx somehow and found himself in this class. And I would go to his house and we played Nintendo, and we wouldn't talk to each other, and we had the best times. We'd have play dates where the parent really didn't know how to speak English, and the kid didn't know how to speak English, and my parents like, go have fun with Shigeki. And we had a great time. We played video games, best time. So I was sitting next to him in kindergarten, and for some reason, I yelled shit at the top of my lungs at kindergarten. Tiny little Ben. And Mrs. Parley goes, Benjamin! And I go, Shigeki did it! And I saw her she had to stifle a laugh, kind of. And then she told my mom, who was in the same school, same public school, and my mom was like, you cannot do that. And then she told my dad, and my dad it was like, oh, I could be funny and get away with some shit too.
And it's a real laugh because it's not just in the moment, but in the retelling, it still got laughs.
Yes.
So the writing was good.
And also that story was then told a lot.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I heard that story and how funny they thought that story was. But always at the end they go, and Ben, that was very bad of you. But it's like me as a kid watching them tell that story to their friends. I was like, oh, okay, maybe. I think that was one of the first times, the first story I heard from my parents at least, that was so bad but so funny.
Meanwhile, Shigeki's getting the shit beat out of him for saying shit
Mrs.
in
Parley,
class.
yeah, Mrs. Parley. He was suspended for 4 months.
Yeah, wow.
It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ruined his life.
I haven't seen him since.
Yeah, but you now have a great career.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'll comp him to a show.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think so.
Find him, comp him.
Mm-hmm.
What was
FNC.
the first thing that made you laugh? Or the first comedy love affair that you had?
Wow, what a great question.
Thank you so much.
Man, I've never thought about this stuff. The things I loved as a kid were Jim Carrey films. So when I was a kid, it was Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber is still probably a top 5 movie for me. But cartoons were enormous. The Simpsons were enormous for me. Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck were enormous for me.
That was my biggie.
Conan always talks about comedic timing. We learned that from Looney Tunes and stuff like that. And it is absolutely true. Mel Blanc as a voiceover artist changed the way we think about comedy. And I think The Simpsons changed the way I think about writing. So it's I think all the cartoons I watched as a kid were the first time that I laughed out loud. And loved classical music. You're forced to listen to classical music when you watch that stuff.
Right.
So I would know all this classical stuff without knowing that I was learning it.
The big joke in my household, it's still a running joke with my mom. It's oh, did you learn it from Looney Tunes?
Oh my God.
Every single thing. I was how do you know how to spell Albuquerque as a 5-year-old? It's Looney Tunes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Why? How do you know that opera? Bugs Bunny.
Crazy.
It's really
Bugs Bunny in drag.
Right. Yeah.
Incredible.
Groundbreaking. But yeah, and I still use that as a touchstone now when people are oh, it's because there's kind of a rash now of people wanting to dumb stuff down for the audience, in writing at least.
You think so?
Yes. And especially I've done a lot of children's television. So
yes,
that's
that
a common
Kind
conversation.
of
It's
yes.
well, they don't know what that is, so we can't put it in.
Yes.
And the other school of thought is, no, put it in and then they'll want to look it up. They'll want to know what it is. It'll make them smarter. I didn't know growing up what a fucking Hooverville was, but I learned because of Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
So you learn about Herbert Hoover and you learn about the Depression and from a cartoon.
That's true.
So yeah, anyway,
I think when we do improv now, one of the things that I tell people is to go for your joke that you think is funny that you don't know if anybody else understands, and let the audience one of the big things that I was always taught when I took classes, play to the top of your intelligence. Always play to the top of your intelligence. And whatever crazy thing you can do or think of that makes sense to you, say it, and you'll find people in the audience that like it. I like that a lot. But the bigger shows we do now that we perform, and you're a part of these huge shows, you can hear the little pockets of people who get it. And sometimes the bit is that only 10 people got a joke, because it was not that it was too smart, it was just too specific of whatever, and then it is called out and then that part can be funny also. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I love the idea of we always kind of go for it and play to the top of our intelligence and then see what happens.
It's almost like there's a separate category of like the top of your comedic intelligence, or not to quantify it with top and bottom, but like the playing to the specificity of your comedic taste.
Yes, dude.
Like if it makes you laugh, it's worth saying, and it's your instinct being funny in that moment or being ticklish.
And also if we're really being in the moment, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. I'm going to go for. I'm going to sing this Boys to Men song that's on track 12 of this album.
Yeah.
And see who gets it. And sometimes it's the biggest laugh. I feel like a lot of times when I watch movies that I really connect with, it's because I'm seeing a scene or a feeling or an emotion that totally feels like something I felt or went through or something like that, if that makes sense. And I'm like, sometimes we can give that to people too.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of comedy, I think, and a huge part of improv, because we are in the room having the shared moment.
Yes.
And that specific joke on a different night might get a laugh from 50 people or one person or whatever. It's that comedy sonar of like even the people in the room get to find each other, you know.
We did a show in Minneapolis a year ago where Colton is from Minnesota and he was in that show and he did a joke that none of us got and it absolutely crushed. And all of us are like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it was his home city. He was referencing something small that happened in a small town that everybody in that city knew.
Amazing.
And it crushed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to reverse a little bit.
Let's go on this journey with you, whatever you want. I'm so excited to be here.
Put your rain poncho on. You might get wet on this ride. That's a specific reference.
We got to talk Disneyland sometime in this.
Goodness, we'll
Susie
get there.
Susie and I went to Disneyland again. Okay, we'll get there.
We'll get there. So you were scared to try out for the improv group in your college. Did you ever, or did that pass you by?
It's a great story. I was dating someone at the time, and I was a junior at the time, and the opportunity came to audition. I didn't audition the year before, and this year my girlfriend said, you should audition. And I go, I can't. She goes, you know one or two of the people on the team. One of her friends is on the team. Just audition. What are you doing? And she like kind of forced me to audition. And I was so nervous, and I didn't have a great audition, but I made the team, and it was a short form team. I made the team.
What was the team name?
Idle Minds.
Okay.
Because Idle Minds, obviously, because idle, the idea of a car being idle, but also we paint the idol. There's a thing called the idol on campus at Union College, so it was like a reference to that as well.
Great.
And slowly, me and a gentleman named Drew Winiger, I want to say Winiger, were kind of two of the people that started to pop a little bit, and people would come after the show and say nice things to us, and all of a sudden now I'm getting a little bit of confidence that maybe I should be doing this, and then those shows started going really well, and I really started to love that feeling and love making people laugh. I love making people laugh. I love the idea that someone could come in. I mean, especially with the shows we're doing now, people can come in having a crappy day, month, or terrible whatever, and we can give them an hour and a half of just joy. And they're not remembering anything, whether they're sick or something bad happened, and we're giving them something that they can take with them for that day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And an experience that only the people around them really know what the hell happened. Because improv is not like stand-up in that if you're someone in stand-up, oftentimes you're doing very similar jokes from location. But this is the only time this show is going to exist. And it's just for you guys. Next city. This is a whole new show. This is only for you guys. But anyway, so she forced me to audition. And then right when I graduated college, I took Second City, New York, and I took UCB. And Second City, New York I didn't mesh with it at all. And UCB.
Why not?
It was all warm-ups. Maybe the class that I took was all warm-ups. Like, we spent 35, 40 minutes on, warming up our bodies and stuff. And I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And then the second I went to UCB, it was right to game. Let's learn how to play game. Let's learn how to be funny on stage. Let's learn how to be truthful on stage. And I was like, oh, I am all about this.
Yeah.
I'm all about this. And immediately got an internship there so I could afford free classes. And it was great. But it all started with my girlfriend forcing me to audition because I was too afraid. And then finally, when I got a little bit of people being like, oh, you're good at this. I was like, oh, and then my confidence started going up, being like, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying.
And then you dumped that girl, and then you
dumped that girl.
You became a hit
that
without her.
That girl was Michelle Obama.
Oh, wow.
So she did fine.
Yeah, she's good.
She did fine.
Okay, I'm not going to cry over her. Yeah.
No. You do cry. Does the podcast know you cry?
I do. I cry.
Do you cry on the podcast?
I actually have.
Okay,
that's
good.
the sad
One
thing.
of my favorite things, and we'll get to that too. Susie is such a lovely, warm, and heart forward person that when you feel something, you feel it with like every part of you.
I really do.
And we've been around for you to experience some very special things. And I just watched Susie experience those things in real time. And it's the best part is she starts crying and then comes up to you and explains what she's feeling. And it's like you get to be a part of the emotion. It's happened 2 or 3 times, and it's just one of my favorite things. And I've told this is not new to you. I've told you how much I love watching the process through your eyes is gorgeous.
I'm
very good with your emotions.
Everyone in my family is a crier.
Really?
And anytime a new friend like comes home for like Christmas or something and sees like my brother will open a gift and he's like, "This reminds me of you knew that I like Dumbo," and then my mom will open a gift and she's like, "Oh gosh, it's just so thoughtful." Just like a
one of your
disease
closest
that
friends came to the Orpheum and when she was talking to me after the show and just started crying. I was like, "Of course, of course." And anytime I see you or someone else cry, I start to get emotional. I'm just like, "Oh my God," I'm like starting to get emotional just watching you. Sorry, we'll get there.
It's
we have
all right.
so much time to get there.
We have so much time, but this is great. So you took to UCB like a fish in water.
Immediately.
Was this concept of gameplay, like the game of the scene, was that kind of a revelation for you, or was it like, oh, of course, this is what I've already been doing anyway in my short form stuff?
I felt short form. You can learn tricks to get through everything. Like that ABC game, you know your letters, you're gonna whatever, and it's improvised. But a lot of times because you're nervous on stage, you want to make people laugh. For the short form you do in college, because you're playing the same games, you kind of know what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
I can make what happens different, but I know what's going to happen next. I love the idea of coming up. When I went to UCB for the first time, I saw Ass Cat, and then I saw Harold in the Dark, and those are the two. And the Ass Cat was fine, and Amy wasn't there. Amy's like, I love Amy Poehler, she's one of the reasons why I took classes there. And then when I saw the UCB4 perform, I'm like, what the fuck? It was like, it blew my mind. But the thing that really destroyed me was a Harold in the Dark. Because I remember I saw Ass Cat and I was like, God, these guys are coming up. They're going to stage with nothing. On stage is just 4 chairs. That's why whenever I start my shows, I put a spotlight on 4 chairs because I'm showing the audience, this is all that it's going to be. It's just going to be 4 chairs. We're going to make up everything. And then, and I was like, they're making up everything in a spot. That's so incredible. It's like a magic trick. Then the show I saw without any lights, it was Optimus International doing either a Harold, it was either Cage Match or a Harold, and I was like, I can't even see them, and they're crushing. They're crushing, and I was like, I have to learn how to do this. I have to learn how to do this form. I want to be on the stage. I was so obsessed. So I became an intern for a long time. Then I became a bartender at UCB. Then I was the person who booked their touring company. Like, I did everything I can to be involved in that world because I just want to be around it. I was obsessed with it.
You told a story on when you were on Fallon recently about you and Gil like getting up on the stage after hours and pretending like you were in shows.
I was doing garbage. I was an intern, so I was doing garbage in the recycling and giving out tickets. And then when it was over, it was either Alex Sidis or Chuck Dauble. Chuck was one of my favorite managers, same with Alex. And Chuck has passed away, but he was also a great improviser, but an incredible manager from Detroit. And he, it would be over, so I'm there. Adam would come, Gil would come, and we would beg him, when I'm done with the garbage, I mop the stage. Is it possible for us to get on the stage and just improvise for nobody? The shows are over. Everything's over.
Yeah.
And the manager's like, my man, just let us fucking leave. And Alex would let us do it, and Chuck would let us do it for you can have 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes while he's counting the money. And so we would get on stage right after Amy was on stage, and Ian and Matt. It would, like, sometimes like huge celebrities would be the monologist, or like Tina would be improvising, or like, Horatio was there a lot, and who else? There's so many: Rob Riggle, Paul Scheer, Jack McBrayer, Peter Gwynn, John Glazer would come every now and then. Rachel Dratch played a lot. Seth Meyers, but these people are like, they're on SNL,
right?
At a time when I didn't know, I've never met a famous person in my life, and it was like, I can't believe the funniest people are coming underneath a supermarket to perform for free.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And so we would go on stage and we would perform for nobody and we would crack each other up. And it was the best. We were a 3-person sketch team and improv team called Hot Sauce. And it was our favorite time. We made nothing was more exciting than those first shows of starting to get laughs.
Yes.
So I cherish those moments.
Was there a fantasy element to that? Like, were you in your mind's eye imagining, like, oh, one day, if only I could be on SNL, or if only I could be on a team at UCB? Were you like kind of
The team one? I don't think I could dream big enough for SNL, but I could dream big enough to be like, oh man, I'd love to get on that stage and perform in something other than a class show.
Yeah.
Like that's what I wanted so desperately. So I felt that, and like always there's something being like, I remember when I was watching SNL, maybe people who do comedy can relate to this. I would love the show, but anytime the host at the end would be saying goodbye, I would randomly find myself getting emotional. So I was like, oh my God, I'd so desperately want to one day do that. They just did that whole show. They're saying goodbyes themselves.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that's
The
like
music
the dream.
is gorgeous.
Oh my God.
Like gospel chords.
I would be like, you did it, like the feeling of doing that whole show, and then at the end, like saying goodbye with this incredible cast behind you. I was like, oh my God.
After like a 1 week summer camp with the best comedians in the country.
Still a dream. I when I started, I had 5 things on my bucket list, and SNL's the only one I haven't hit yet.
I can't believe they haven't had you yet.
Maybe one day. I don't know.
I mean, maybe next week.
I gotta do a lot more Sonic movies. I don't know how many more Sonic movies.
A lot more.
A ton more.
Let's talk about when did the idea of being an actor or having this as a career, like making your life all about comedy, when did that enter into your
That was
life?
when I started doing improv. And when I did it in college and I started to get people starting to tell me I was good at it and laughing at me, I was like, oh, I got to try this. And I remember talking to my parents, and I did the play that year. So I took an acting class to raise my GPA. I was so close to cum laude, and all the football players who were failing out of college would take that class so they wouldn't fail. And I took that class to just bump me up just a tiny bit to get to cum laude. So I took acting and I took an improv class. But in that acting class, they forced you to audition for the play, and the play was a Brecht play. It was Caucasian Chalk Circle.
Oh, yeah.
And I got Azdak, which is a big role in that thing. And so I was doing improv, and I did that play, and it was very hard, but I had fun. He also let me improvise a little bit, which is like makes no sense for Brecht.
Right.
But Brad...
were all the football players in your class?
For acting, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Brad
so
Beckman,
fun.
I think, was his name. Yes. And Yarrow, Professor Yarrow Joanne Yarrow, I think was a different person there as well. But I remember it was the showtime. My parents drove the 3 hours from New York to upstate New York, and the director went up to them and was like, hey, just so you know, if he wants to do this, he could probably do this.
Oh.
And they're like, really? And I was like, and so I talked to him. I was like, you know what? I think I want to try doing comedy. I don't know about acting. Maybe I can work from comedy to acting, but I really want to try doing comedy. And my parents were very supportive, which was huge, but also scared because they know how impossible it is. So they're like, all right, you know what? Give it a year and a half or something like that, or a year or so, and then we can reevaluate, which is nothing.
I was going to say, now that you and I are sitting on the other side of so many years, it's like a year is basically not even to the starting line.
Yes.
Like, it's
almost like Chris Rock talks about doing stand-up at the beginning like grad school. Like, it's like instead of doing grad school, you're doing 4 years of just doing stand-up and getting better at it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like doing years of improv until I learned how to kind of do it, and I could, now I'm getting better. Now I'm getting better, and stuff like that. So we kind of looked at it like that in my family, and I always wondered, like, I always liked talking to my parents about, like, did you have a feeling at some time, like, there's a chance I might be able to do something in this, or what did that feel like for you? And my dad always says, like, he was always happy that I was doing it, but was so nervous about the failure that comes with it.
Yeah.
And me having to deal with constantly being told no, and what type of life that's going to be for someone that always is told no and you're not good enough. And I was like, yeah, that part is one of the hardest parts of what we do.
Do you feel rejection over like auditions and stuff like that? Do you feel that deeply?
Still, I just had a couple auditions for things, and I felt like I think I did well for what I can do. And I was like, and I didn't get it. And what happens now is different than before. Before I'd be like upset at myself for like a week. Bad shows. Oh my God. I used to beat myself up. Oh.
Thinking that you messed it up.
Or like, I could have done this. Why did I not do anything? What am I doing? That was such a bad move. Why am I doing or I would really spiral. The same way, my therapist always talks about this, the same way that on stage my brain works very quickly. My brain can work very quickly in a negative way to ruin myself a little bit, to go after myself.
Yeah,
so the quickness that you and I use on stage can easily. Do you feel that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
To beat ourselves up.
There's a lot of people paddling the brain boat, and if they're paddling in a great direction, it's so positive and helpful, and if they're paddling in a bad direction, then it spirals quickly.
Yeah. So it's like I try to learn how to separate my self-worth from the industry. So like if I'm told no, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. If I have a bad show, it doesn't mean I'm bad, whatever. And then it always hurts a little bit, but the space of time that it hurts is way less than at the beginning. Way less.
So it's shrinking. Yeah.
But it takes time. It always sucks. Any actor or improviser watching this, every bad show afterwards, like, ugh. But those really because once you do a billion shows, after a while, you're like, and also then you don't really have terrible shows.
Right.
Your
batting average gets to a point where you're not.
I'll think that a show wasn't as good as it could be. I'm sure I talked to you after a show being like, that was all right. But like the audience had a blast. They don't know that I've done a bunch of shows and I'm like, I always want every show to be up here. And if it's a little down here, I'm like, ugh, if it's a little down here. But then when you've been a part of these Ben Schwartz and Friends shows that kill afterwards, I'm like, how fun was that? And we're all on cloud 9.
Yeah.
And you were in we had back-to-back great shows. I forget what cities. We all had great shows, but like there were two ones in particular that I was like, I remember talking to someone because you were new to our group, and I was like, dude, Susie just had 2 fucking home runs in a row. It was crazy.
I think those were DC and Austin.
I think that's what
those
it was.
were so fun.
They were really special shows.
Yeah, and those venues were so cool. That brings me to a question that I want to ask. We're starting a new thing where our subscribers can reach out and ask questions.
Oh, I love
specifically
this. And they're mostly improvisers, right?
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait. I never get to do this. Maybe 1 or 2 times ever do I talk about improv.
Amazing. So
it's a Sonic question.
It's a Sonic, right?
All right. How's Jim Carrey?
This person, Nicole, says, do you feel like your improv changes with the size of a venue? For example, Largo versus Radio City.
Great question. One of the biggest things that we had to figure out, and when Middleditch and Schwartz started touring the venues that a lot of improvisers haven't played before, was how do we make it feel like you're coming to one of our shows at UCB or Largo? How do you make it feel? So what I always think about is I don't change the show. The only thing I do is I tell maybe I didn't tell you this, but some performers will go very dark sometimes, and I've felt us lose the audience if someone does like a weird reference to like 9/11. We're like, what are you doing? Or like something like that. Where in theaters, but many years before, like sometimes people would go very dark in weird places. On tour, when you're with a lot in front of a lot of people, I don't want to lose the audience. And sometimes pushing too hard in a direction that is just for improv comedians, because sometimes at UCB you're doing shows just for improv comedians. That's the one thing that I tell people to do, not push. The other one is to not follow story as much, because a lot of people watching our shows, it's the first time they're ever seeing long-form improv. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason why I'm like, we got to show them this is cool, because stand-ups have been shitting on us for so long. Show them they can come to one of these shows and this is funny and you get it and we can connect everything. There could be a story, but sometimes if you follow plot too long, like if you do an improv show here, sometimes you get lost. The audience will get lost and we're not back to the funniness. So, but I always try to make it feel like exactly what you would see in Largo. Just sometimes Largo is crazier because the audience kind of pushes you, and Largo, we can go bananas because it's people who've seen our show a billion times. Those other venues, you don't want to go so bananas that people are like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
But I really try my best not. I want to give people the experience of these things. I want to make it feel intimate. I want to make it feel like even though we're around 6,000 people or 3,600 people, it feels like it's just us in a little black box theater.
Yeah. One thing that I want to compliment you on that you do a really amazing job
I've never talked with someone who's ever done one of my Ben Schwartz and Friends shows ever on an interview.
Let's get into it.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
You're literally someone who's been on stage and cried. Yeah. So it's great. This will be good for me to hear.
You ruined a show. We had to stop because you were bawling for 30 minutes. Inconsolable. Something that you do really well is you are meticulous about the quality of sound of your shows.
Yeah.
We go for a sound check, and that is not a throwaway moment for you. You bring your own mics in your own case. You don't leave anything up to chance. There's some venues where we've spent like an hour because the people it wasn't quite right. And it was like, no, we need to all be able to hear each other so clearly. And we need, you personally go to every corner of the theater to make sure that each person can hear okay.
Yeah,
And it's not
and I
echoey.
sit next to the sound engineer. And we work and I'm always so polite and kind. I want everybody to know how appreciative we are.
Yes.
But it's like, they've never seen an improv show before. They don't know. I was like, we don't have in-ears. The only way we can hear each other. So, and Drew, who performs a lot with me, sometimes can't hear on stage. So I was like, if we can't hear each other on stage, then we can't do the best show. And then like now DC is not seeing the best version of what we do. And I want him to hear us.
The first show I did with Drew, I was so appreciative because he's like your vet. He's like your ride or die. Drew Tarver.
For Ben Schwartz and Friends, he's done more shows than any other improviser.
And it's great. And you guys are such a like
I love him.
perfect pair.
I think he's an unbelievable improviser.
Unbelievable.
And he can do everything.
Yeah, totally. And is funny literally saying anything. Like even as a straight man, he's like everything he says and does is hilarious. But when he couldn't hear stuff, I was appreciative because I have terrible hearing. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, I didn't want to say anything because it's like, I don't want to like step on the thing or make the sound check longer.
Yeah.
But like knowing that was my insight into like, oh, we are allowed to make this perfect for us.
All of us.
And it helps the room and it helps the show.
Oh,
that was
wait,
like such
by the
a
way,
revelation
Susie,
to me.
a great first. So whenever we're doing this, it very much is about the group. I come out to introduce everybody, but when we're on stage, it's about the group. And I want everybody. I always give everybody their moment. At the end, I always give everybody their moment. And I remember the first show. I think the first show you did with us, the first tour show. I don't remember what city it was. Oh no, I don't remember one of the first shows you ever did with us. You at the end of the show, do you remember this? At the end of the show, I make sure everybody's on stage so I could give love to everybody who did the stage.
I didn't know.
And you're so used to, like, if someone's hosting something, so the show was over and Susie's like, good night, everybody. And Susie just left so I could say goodbye to everybody. And I was like, no, Susie, come back in.
I was literally off stage.
Where was that? Was that Largo? No.
No, it was... I think that might have been DC actually.
Okay.
But I was off stage pulling my microphone off. I had like untaped it from my neck and was like winding up the cord to put the mic away. And you're like, Susie. Yeah. I had to run back out.
All of us to.
Which is also
it's our
so
show.
cool.
We did it. We made a show for everybody.
Yeah, which is very cool. It's we are so fortunate that we get to benefit from your success. That sounds so goofy to say, but like it is true. Like there's so very few people in the world that hit the level of comedic success and fame and popularity that you have, and the idea that you are now.
I'm not very good at this part. I'm not good at.
I know at receiving. I can cut it short if you
No.
want.
You can do it. I'm trying to get better at this.
Yeah, receive.
I want to enjoy these moments too.
Well, also, and then this isn't for you. This is for the listening audience.
Great.
Okay, so there's very few people that reach that level, and you are a beloved, successful public figure. And for you to use that platform to now bring your friends along and people that you think are talented and make a good show that elevates the form of long form improv and brings it to the masses. I mean, there's people, when you go on tour to the middle of Minnesota or like Niagara Falls or wherever, there's people, plenty of them, who have never seen long form improv before.
Most, yeah.
You know, when you ask at the top of the show, how many of you have never seen this? We're talking thousands of people clapping that they have never seen a long form improv show.
Yeah.
So you are spreading kind of the gospel of this art form.
Trying to, yeah.
To so many corners. It is a gift that you're bringing to those people. It's a gift that you're giving to this form. It's a huge gift, a privilege and pleasure for us that we get to kind of ride those coattails and be a part of. Like, when in my life would I ever get to play a 3,200 seat venue doing a long form show?
Yes.
You know,
it's crazy. If you asked me before Thomas and I started touring, I would have been like, oh, this is not even that's not a possibility. And one of my favorite things you were saying, I always turn about someone else. I'm not great talking about myself, but so let's take DC or Austin just because you're here. So one of my favorite things, and I might have told you this in the past, because it used to happen with Jess McKenna before she did Dropout. When I introduce someone at the top of the show, let's say I introduce you first, say Susie Barrett, and the audience claps for you in a polite way, but they don't really know who you are.
Right, very polite.
Right, very polite. But then after they see you do the fucking show, and we have a great show, And I say at the end, I always give everybody give it up, and I go give it up for Susie Barrett, and they go fucking insane. That's one of my favorite moments to show like, oh, you don't even know yet. You don't know what this person is capable of, and then she's about to show you right now. And over the course of an hour and a half, you crush, and then the audience feels like they just like learned about you like in real time, and now they feel like they're like, oh my God, do you know, have you seen Susie on stage? You know what I mean?
Wait till I have a bad show and then it's silent. Just
Susie
utter
Barrett.
silent.
God, Jesus, that's your best friend not crying.
Right.
Yes, but you coming on tour, because I'd done so many tour shows already, was a big. Drew and I talked about this because Drew has done everything with me right now. So it's like, I was like, oh, I loved when you were there because you just made us appreciate what we were doing again and how special it is.
So special.
And after a while, I love being on stage and making people laugh, but it is like, okay, now we're going to do this city, this city, this city. Okay, then I got to do this. I got to find the hotels for everybody here. I got to get the flights for everybody here. I got to do this. I got to make sure we sell out. I got to keep posting. I got to do social things. I got to make sure whatever that when I'm on stage, I'm having a blast, but then I'm worrying about the next city we're doing. Mm-hmm. And you were like, look around. Do you see where we're performing? It's insane. It is insane what we're doing. And you're like showing this art form that we love to so many people. And it was huge for me to hear that. And then Drew was like the same thing. He's like, God, we don't think about that anymore. We love when we're on stage and we're so appreciative. But I think there's a part of me that has to kind of not think about how many people I'm performing in front of, because it would be too much.
Yeah.
Like I can't think that there's 6,000 people in radio. I can't really think what that means. Or we played Chicago Theater 4 times, 3,600 people. I can't really think of what that means. 3,600 people getting in their cars, finding like parking and finding a way to get down there, watching us, like coming because my name's on there and maybe they like improv and then coming and then we like, you almost have to. So I think there's a part of it that doesn't let you enjoy the moment.
Right. Yeah, you have to wall it off to be functional. You have to
and to be humble, like it's like a little bit being like because you can't go back being like, I just made 3,600 people laugh. It's like,
right.
I'm very good at understanding these people came for this moment. When I go back out in the street, this isn't real life. This is this moment. Everybody wants to come laugh. When I go out on the street, it's not like 3,600 people going standing ovation wherever you go.
Right. Well, they got to get back to that car that they parked, that they drove, that
You're
they,
right.
yeah.
That's exactly
Don't
right.
think
Go
about
back.
it. Don't
They
think
have
about
to
it.
get a babysitter?
Stress. Oh my God.
Sounds insane.
Paying those all that cash they have to get out to pay the babysitter.
Imagine if we had a bad show. It'd be terrible.
God.
Yeah.
So many disappointed babysitters.
Disappointed
wasted
babysitters.
their night for no reason.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Do you ever get nervous for those big shows?
The ones I get nervous for were when we did Middleton Schwartz specials. I was very nervous because whatever happened on stage at that time would be our specials. It's not like stand-up where we've tried 100 times. Whatever those specials were going to be the specials that had the biggest audience, any long-form improv, because it's Netflix. So more people, it was available to more people than any other long-form improv special. And so I was very nervous for that. And the first show didn't go well. We had 4 shows and we were allowed to cut 1. So we had to have 3 specials. We made very little money off it. We put all the money into cameras because we wanted to, I remember when we were doing it, I wanted to be like, if we're filming it, let's get our faces. Let's do whatever we can do with the cameras to make you feel like you're really in there. But also like use the cameras to help us, to show the little emotions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But our first show was a terrible interview, a terrible one, where like the guy was kind of not a good dude and he was like cheating on a girlfriend who had cancer or something. I forget the whole thing. And it was so dark. And we didn't know, and because it's the first time we did it, we didn't get a microphone to the person telling the story. So we didn't get because we didn't know who we were going to pick. So we didn't get their audio really well. So we had to learn, like, get someone with a boom there immediately, like quicker or something like that. So we knew after that we only had 3 shows. Whatever happens in these 3 shows are going to be our specials.
Because you knew that first one was
in my
the
head.
One that's
I was
cut.
like, that's it. And then our second show was good. And then I was like, okay, let's loosen up now. The third show was good. And then the fourth one, we're like, let's go fucking crazy. Let's just go crazy. And in those specials, you can kind of see it too. There's one bananas one. There's one really tight, like whatever. So I was really nervous really nervous for Radio City because there was so many people and it was so much pressure. It was the first time improv was ever playing there and probably the first time improv ever played in front of that many people ever.
How many people is that?
6,000. We sold every seat.
Wow.
Crazy. And then, so I think that one. So every now and then, if there's like a huge person in the audience, I get a little nervous. But with every show, when I get my first laugh, I don't know if it's the same with you. Any nerves I have, when I get my first laugh, I'm good.
Yeah.
But until I get that laugh, I'll be like, what is this audience going to be like? And then when I get my laugh, I'm like in the zone.
Yeah, that is a real thing. That is a real phenomenon. Like until because that and that kind of speaks to maybe the psychology behind what comedy is for us partially. It's like that laugh is a signal that you have won them over.
Right.
They are on your team now, so you're fine. You're
Yeah,
safe.
yeah.
You know?
Yes.
So it makes me wonder, like, do I derive a feeling of safety, like life safety, from doing comedy? You know? Is that like a basic need that was filled as a child? You know?
Oh, that's interesting. In my head, it's like, are these guys going to laugh the way that we do comedy, at what we do comedy? So I'm going to hit them the way that I structure my show is at the beginning, I talk to the audience to loosen them up, to make them feel included and tell them what this is going to be about. And that's to warm them up. Everything's going to be okay. I know you're nervous. People in the audience are nervous because they don't know what's going to happen. And they're afraid that we're not going to have a good show or whatever. I make them feel comfortable. I introduce you guys. We all talk to them. We're making them feel comfortable. Now we're interviewing someone in the audience. We're making them laugh during the interview. Now they're fucking relaxed. They are relaxed. Now we're going to improvise. And everybody's in the zone. So it's very purposeful the way that I do it and the way that I try to get the audience in, make them feel very intimate, like we're just talking. Don't worry about it. This is going to be great. And then so that it's very purposeful in that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's very intentional, and it works. The formula that you have developed really does work.
Great.
One thing that I've noticed.
So one thing I don't think is good is one thing I noticed. You're like, well, okay, I do have a lot of notes.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is you dress like an asshole. Get a new wardrobe. No, one thing I've noticed style-wise, you were talking about like don't go dark and stuff like that. Like
don't
interesting
go,
or
like
so
don't say something
dark.
that you know is going to offend people.
Right.
Yeah.
A style thing that I've noticed with your shows is starting out with a slower play for that first scene. And that was a recalibration for me, which is like when we're used to playing, I mean, all the other shows I do are for pretty much exclusively improvisers.
And sometimes 30 minutes long.
Yes. And it's like a real like playing for the home crowd, very inside baseball.
Yes.
You're playing for students and teachers and other improvisers. So we get right to it. We're like a Sentimental Lady show. We're like tagging right away. We're like in the meat of, fast-paced
Yes, you're not
improv.
introducing improv to your audience.
Right, exactly. And for this, it's like, oh no, to play a long play scene that really establishes the characters before we get to kind of the hard gameplay, before we do tags, before we do anything
you can
weird.
have a game in that scene. Just let it play out. And also, don't use the entire story at the beginning.
Sure.
We have to, because oftentimes you'll be like, someone used the whole story in the first two scenes, like, well, now we're inventing everything.
Right.
And the audience feels the audience feels the magic trick when they've heard something in the story and we just connected it. Now the audience is like, oh my God, I see where they're making the scene up.
Right.
If we do every little thing in the first two scenes, then it's just like we're just inventing shit. It's
Right.
not as impressive to them, and you have to convince them we're making it up, which is something you don't have to do when you do an improv show for UCB. They know you're making it up. They are studying. They're all taking classes, stuff like that.
Yeah. That I want to ask back to that question that Nicole asked with the style of play for big room or small room. Do you notice like that you are trying to fill a larger room physically or vocally in any way? Are you making bigger character choices?
I don't think so. I think our microphones help us so that we can be really small or we can be bigger. But I bet if we put them next to each other, I don't think I've ever filmed a smaller show, but if we, I guess Largo, but we go crazy at Largo too. We play big characters. But I bet we play a little bit bigger for, maybe not. I was going to say that, but I don't know if that's true. But in my head, I was like, I bet we play a little bit bigger for those big shows, but we do the same. We just had a Largo show where people are going fucking bananas. Like, it also matters. Like, I put together my touring teams in ways that complement the players complement the other players. Like, Gil is a very big character player. He's going to come with Gil Ozeri. I think is the funniest person in the world. And as an improviser, I think he's extraordinary. But he's always going to play big characters. So I don't want him with another two people that just play characters, because then it's just me juggling huge characters the whole time, and
right.
I'm always trying to do whatever's best for the show. So if I have a funny idea for a huge character, but I also see like, oh, I can I could make what they're doing make a little bit more sense with the theme of the show, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to puppeteer that and to make the whole show better and make everybody else feel good. Sometimes I'll set up someone else to be the cool character that I'm like, oh, this person will crush this. I'm going to let this person have this or something like
right.
that. But I will not pair two big character people oftentimes with each other. Or on the other side, three people who are very brainy. I wouldn't want it to just be a lot of straight men scenes. I want to have someone in there to just like go crazy. Colton will do something out of left field, and then we catch up to it. Or like, but he could also play the straight man. He's pretty amazing as well. But it's like Colton is so good at that, taking us for a ride that we didn't see. I love that shit. And so it's like to have one of those guys on the team is great. And then also I'm thinking about representation. We're going to these cities where a lot of people have never seen a woman do improv before because mostly it's white guys doing improv. So I always have a woman there, and they've never seen someone from the LGBTQ community, and they've never seen someone who's Filipino or black. So I'm trying to, on stage, get representation as widespread as I can. So when people come, they see someone that looks like them or has similar, they can relate to someone on stage, and they could be like, oh shit, look, Susie's fucking up there doing it. Or we did a show at the Beacon where I was the only straight person on stage.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that's like, I love that. And people after shows will come to me and be like, dude, I love you, but to see Mary Holland on stage crush the way she crushed was such a big deal for me. Or like same thing, or like seeing Eugene, who's Filipino, do that. It's like, that is so cool to me.
Yeah. And important and great.
Yes.
And makes it a little bit like a boy band. Like
a little bit like a boy band. We need the bass, the soprano.
Yeah.
I say a basketball team, but it's really like a boy band.
I'm going to start coming out with a cane and taking that
That'd
speak
be great.
chorus.
Baby.
Yeah, listen. This one comes from Katrina. Do you have favorite attributes to gift scene partners or any that you find fun to receive?
Ooh, when I'm playing with Gil, who I've done improv with probably the longest now, I love pimping him out. I love pimping him out, and then like, or like, hey man, just don't blow up when you're in there. Like sometimes I like to give him that because I know how much he loves going crazy. So I like sometimes like I'll find myself if the scene, gives it, I'll give him that. I'm trying to think of what I like. It just matters what's happening in the moment. I'm not really thinking about it. Although with Drew, I know he doesn't know a lot of pop culture references. And I know if we've somehow landed in a scene with that, I'll push it on him to give it. And we'll watch him fail.
Watch him make up
because he literally doesn't know. Like
right.
He doesn't know any Marvel characters. He doesn't really know Disney stuff. And he doesn't know lyrics to a couple like cheesy songs that so it's like, if we're in there and he's in the scene, I will, just because we've done so many scenes together, I would pop it to him. And he's like... So like stuff like that. I'll pimp people out in that way. Playing stuff they're really good at, but also like stuff that I know they're not good at, just because it's like we've done so many shows together. We like to fuck around.
It's goofy, yeah.
And then for me, I don't know how often someone. I mean, you've done shows with us now. I don't know how often people are like, "Oh, I'm going to make Ben do this." I will sometimes have the idea to come out as a crazy character, and everybody will support. Everybody on any Ben Schwartz and Friends show, I think, is some of the best improvisers in the world, and everybody is willing to support the other person.
Yeah.
That's what I think is big. So if we come out with an idea and I have this great fucking idea, but you start the scene, my idea's done. I don't ever have to think about it again. If I can pop it in a future scene, fine. But like all I'm doing is I want to support you like crazy. I want you to feel so supported. And I think the audience feels that too, that like that stuff.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, and it speaks to the spirit of, it's like a team sport for you. And you play like a point guard and you're like setting up.
That's exactly what I try to do.
Setting everything up. Yeah. So that it has the most success.
Yes.
Let's talk about Parks and Rec. Can we?
Sure. You can talk whatever you want.
Great. Fine.
This is
I'll
great.
talk about Parks and Rec.
Okay.
You're so great in it.
Okay.
Okay. What was that process like getting it? Like, did you audition?
Great story.
Great.
Two great stories.
Okay.
Katie Dippold, who is in Ben Schwartz and Friends, that
Yes.
improvises even before I was improvising, just like you. You've improvised before I improvised. They were. I had a meeting. I did these things for ESPN where I would interview athletes. Like before Between Two Ferns is a very long time ago. Awkwardly interview these athletes. It was called
great.
Sunday Conversations on ESPN.
Can we find it online?
Probably, but they're so old. Like I interviewed Nastya Lukin, who was an Olympic medalist, and I auditioned. And by the way, I don't know how well they hold up, but Sean Merriman and like some big Tony Hawk and all these people, and I think Tony Hawk was one of them. And anyway, And I would do it in a very like I was kind of slowly in the bit. I was hitting on Nasty Luke. I was just like, please just go on a date with me, something like that. And then the other guys, I was just like stupid and not really caring about them. Like that was the bit kind of. I just want to make it very comedic and kind of like, when things go wrong or if I get anxious as my character or whatever. And Mike Schur, who created Parks with Greg Daniels, who I've been done 2 shows with, he saw those and he wanted to bring me in. And he brought me in, and it was him and Katie Dippold, because I had done improv with Katie, and Harris Whittles, who's a genius writer.
Genius.
Another person who's passed away, but he's amazing. He was incredible, incredibly funny. And he had a meeting, and it was about Amy had a love interest that year that was a cop. Louis C.K. ended up doing the role. And we were talking, and he goes, you know what? I think you're too young for this role. It was before Louis got cast. And he goes, I think you're too young for this role. But he said, Mike goes, but the Parks and Rec is like The Simpsons. So like we have all Springfield to play with. So if there's ever a character that can pop up in Springfield, like, you in Pawnee, we'll keep you in mind. Because he goes, I really love these shorts. It's really nice to meet you and stuff like that. And then this is the part that I didn't tell until recently. I won't name names, but because I don't even know the person's name. So I got a call. Someone from Parks called my agency at the time, and an assistant was subbing in for the normal assistant that covers that desk. And they got a call, and they offered me John Ralphio, and the person passed without asking me. Said, no, he's not interested in that. By the way, this is the beginning of my career where I would have done
anything. Literally
anything.
Why would they?
I think it's because it was just like a paragraph or something small. I don't know. I never talked to the person afterwards. And I never would have found out. So that person, that's what I heard. That person passed. Katie Dippold texted me or called me the next day. Hey, just before we move on, is there anything we did? Or was like, are you sure? I thought you wanted to be in the show. And I go, what are you talking about? She goes, we offered you a role. I go, what? In what? He goes, in Parks. I go, yeah, whatever it is. Of course, I'll do it. And she goes, oh, you passed. I go, I have no idea what you're talking about. They go, yeah, we offered you the role and your agency passed.
This is one of the most insane
and
stories.
I said, you don't even have to tell me what the role is. I'm in. She goes, listen, I understand why maybe you would pass because it looks like it's just a paragraph in a scene. It was just I don't know if you've ever seen the show, but the first scene that I'm in is Aziz comes in. He's like, here's my best friend, John Ralphio. And I'm like, what it do? I don't forget what I do. But it's like, I have an interview with Swanson and then it's over. And then he says he would never hire me. And that's the only thing that I saw. That's the only thing that they showed, whatever. And so she's like, listen, I think there's a chance he'll probably come back. Like, it won't be one thing. And because I'd already been the lead of a different show. And I was like, one of the lead characters. And I was like, I don't care. Yeah, whatever it is. Of course, I'm in. And she goes, oh my God, great, fantastic, because you had already passed. I was like, no. And I called my agent. I was like, what the hell is going on? I just got a call from there. He goes, and he didn't quite know my agent, who I love. That agent, by the way, is one of my favorite people in the world. I don't know if he knew about it. I don't know he didn't know what happened, but
he immediately hit a trapdoor button, and that assistant dropped to the center of the earth.
If I didn't know Katie, and she had my number, I never would have even known that it was offered to me. I never would have gotten it. And that was the biggest role in my career because that started everything.
Yes.
For me.
And it still is everything.
I get recognized for it more than that. That and Sonic are the 2 things. But then I went on set and I was nervous because Amy's like a hero of mine. She was, they had a show, and I knew Aziz, so I knew Aziz and Aubrey just because I'm
from UCB. Yeah.
So that wasn't nerve-wracking to me, but it's like the show was really funny. I wanted to be part of really funny shows, and then we did a rehearsal with Swanson. My first time ever meeting Nick Offerman was right then, and after the rehearsal, and I improvised a little bit, and Mike Schur came up next to me right after the rehearsal. He goes, "You'll be coming back." And then he went upstairs and they wrote my character into...
Wow.
I think they were probably figuring out what it was going to look like. Maybe are they going to use him or not? The writers know more than I would. But he literally came up to me and goes, we'll be bringing you back. And then I did 21 episodes, and it was the biggest thing to jumpstart my career.
Incredible. And not to mention, great for your hair.
For part 2 of this episode, go to yesalso.supercast.com. If you like this podcast, you can support us and get a ton of bonus content over at yesalso.supercast.com. If you have a question about improv that you'd like us to answer on one of our future Q&A episodes, send it on over to yesalsopod@gmail.com. Remember to follow us on Instagram at yesalsopod and keep sharing us with your improv communities. We love the love. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.